About a year ago, we had an interview with David Dole, and it was a really interesting interview, and it was all about how should progressives vote. And in fact, the topic turned out being, should we vote for Joe Biden if he becomes the nominee? Anyway, the video was lost. We actually got it recovered. Arno got to it somehow, and so it's still super relevant. So I think this is a great discussion, and with our good friend David Dole, I hope you enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him, you love him, of the very popular and meticulously researched show. It is David Dole from the Rational National, or the National Rational. What is it? Which one?
Rational National.
Okay.
Though a lot of people make that mistake. So. Yeah.
Boy, I'm a good host. You think I would remember the name of your show that I'm introducing? I have it right here too. I have everything written down. This is what I should say. David Dole is a video producer, writer, and social media specialist. Oh my!
That's an old bio. Don't use that.
Based in the Greater Toronto area. Oh, you're in Toronto? Oh, I didn't know.
Yes, I am.
He's also the host of the popular independent political YouTube show, The Rational National. Hi, David. Thank you for coming on the show. Now, you were telling me...
Hey, Jimmy.
I didn't know that. We just did another one of our live shows. Last Friday in Burbank, we had James Adomian, who's, if you don't know who that guy is, he's a powerhouse, hilarious, great impressionist. Didn't he do a thing on Comedy Central where he played Bernie and somebody... Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that was it. Okay. Yeah. I'm in touch. I don't watch TV, but I knew that. Also, we had Paul Gilmartin was unbelievable. He was never in better form as Representative Richard Martin. And Dave Anthony from the Dollop was on, and he was just as angry as ever, so that's good. You were telling us that you actually came to one of our first live Jimmy Dore shows we ever did in Burbank, California, like 3 years ago,
right.
or 2 years ago.
Yeah, this was 2017. I think it was in April or so, or March or April. Me and my girlfriend came down, saw you live. It was a great time. We met you, Steve-O, Steph.
Woo-woo. Is that the one where I made fun of Rachel Maddow saying that the guy from Roger Ailes was her friend?
Sorry, your video just froze for a second. What'd you say?
Do you remember if that was the show during that show? If I made
actually, it was the first time you had Ro Khanna on your show live. It was that show. Yeah, it was that show.
You know what? I was such a knucklehead that night because I didn't realize what a big deal that was that Ro Khanna was there. Like he comes into the green room. Yeah. I'm like, hey, you want a martini? And I'm drinking.
It was hard to foresee though, like how important Ro Khanna would eventually come to be. So yeah, that was sort of his like first big public appearance, was kind of on your show, and then from there he sort of grew his name after that.
Yeah, a lot of progressives like to use our show as a springboard, and then they never look back. They never like, huh? I didn't see. No, Ro's been on our show since, so he's a good guy. Although what do you make of when a guy like Ro Khanna is wishy-washy on Venezuela and stuff like that? And does it bother you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of internal pressures that we're not so aware of, and sometimes there may be trade-offs behind the scenes, whereas if you play a game on Venezuela, then we'll go with you on this issue. And I think a lot of unfortunately, or I mean, depending how you look at it, Congress people can go the wrong way based on those sorts of behind the door meetings. But yeah, it is unfortunate that a lot of them have taken a more I guess establishment position on certain foreign policy issues. But I mean, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib out there are killing it. So if they can do it, I'm not sure why other Congress people are having issues.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar seems to be, she seems to be the real deal for sure. And they're coming after her. They're not going to let her. They're not going to let her do what she's doing. In fact, I bet they primary her. The Democrats do.
Well, they're going to try, but there's no way she'll be primaried. I mean, she's too popular in her district. There's absolutely no way she'll be out.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Now you probably know more about it because that's closer to where you live, eh? Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
I love saying "a." So now. Do you know who Jeremy Hotz is?
Jeremy Hotz, no.
Oh, okay. So he's a Canadian comedian, which is a funny thing to say, also Canadian comedian.
There's a lot of Canadian comedians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Canadian comedian named John Dore. You know him?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's very funny. He's very funny,
he's
but
popular.
I certainly blow him away as far as Twitter followers go, and that's how I measure a person. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It only matters if you're retweeted, and that's the important thing. So here's Dave. Now, David Dole, the Rational National. This is the reason why I was watching a video of yours where you were lamenting about Obama, but let me set it up. Obama was over in Europe, and he was once again wagging his finger at the left. And the first time we covered him, he was in Italy, and he was wagging his finger at American voters for not voting. Instead of the American political system that is designed to suppress the vote, we vote on a Tuesday. We vote on a work day. He doesn't talk about any of that stuff, and he just and then the politician. So I always thought if someone doesn't come out to vote for you, that's on the politician. That's what I always thought. So Barack Obama was over in Europe, and he said this about the left being purists. Here's what he said.
Then we start sometimes creating what's called a circular firing squad, where you start shooting at your allies because one of them is straying from purity on the issues.
So that's basically there. It's a much longer clip, but that's basically the gist of what he was saying. Don't be a purist, right? But then like Obama always, he then said, but don't compromise your core values. So he's on all sides of the issue. And then this is your reaction to that. And this is what really made me laugh. Here we go.
You are actually talking about compromise. Understand, you should be compromising. If there's compromise, it should be based around what the American people want, not what donors want. So again, for somebody so intelligent, for somebody that has a lot of good qualities, Obama has many great qualities, but for him to just completely not understand strategy whatsoever, to come to the table with the public option and not something much far left of that, so then you were then forced to compromise down to something else. I mean, for him to not understand this basic idea of strategy and how to actually make a deal, it blows my mind that he still does not get this.
Okay. So when I watched that, David,
Yeah.
first of all, it brought me much joy. As you can tell, it still does. But it blew my mind, because that's how I felt before I read Listen Liberal. So then I read Listen Liberal, and I don't have that question anymore and I stumbled at the same day as I was watching you be perplexed over Obama. Why doesn't he understand strategy? I also clicked on this video, and this is from 10 years ago. This is from 2010, right after Barack Obama and the Democrats got wiped out in the midterms. And it was because Barack Obama had revealed himself to be a toady of the Wall Street and of the health insurance and Big Pharma already. And so listen to what, I think the answer to your question is right here. Here it is. It's from Dylan Ratigan. Right, here we go.
I think that the answer to why he didn't do it is the obvious one, which is that 40% of all money for political functionality comes from banks. The next biggest contributor for all political functionality, all campaign money, comes from the healthcare insurance companies and insurance monopoly. We functionally have, Glenn, a government that is not Democrats, Republicans, but that is 6 major industries that provide all of the capital, most of it coming from healthcare and finance, energy, defense, not far behind. And as a result, the politicians work to perpetuate those old interests. To your point, everybody would like to see more choice, more competition, but they don't get it because the politicians are more happy to work for those who write the checks at the expense of the balance of our country. Right. How much longer can it be gotten away with?
So I know you already know this, which is why it was perplexing to for me to see you openly wonder, why does Barack Obama not understand strategy? And my response to you would be, he totally understands strategy. His strategy was to make sure we didn't get the fucking public option, and we didn't get it. I think the mistake people make is thinking Barack Obama has the same interests and goals as we do. What do you say?
I mean, ultimately, he's a conservative on many issues. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the issue of healthcare, he was conservative. And so this is why it's perplexing to me, because Obama has said a lot of nice things, said a lot of great things. So when you see him parting this so-called wisdom onto people about sticking to your core principles, well, clearly his core principles are conservative because you didn't fight for an actual universal healthcare system that could have actually helped everybody. I mean, if he actually wanted the public option, as I say in that video, he would have gone further left on the issue rather than start with the public option and then compromise from there. Because when you start with the public option and then, so the reason apparently behind the scenes is that the reason that the public option was taken out was because of Joe Lieberman and Joe Lieberman's ties to the health insurance industry. Okay, so I want to hear what you say about this.
Okay, so what happens always is there's always just enough Democrats to kill a bill. Whoever, so that time it happened to be Joe Lieberman played the role. I'll be the killer. So, but if you remember Barack Obama when he was campaigning to get the ACA passed, he didn't go to Joe Lieberman's district and shame him. He went to Dennis Kucinich's district and shamed him because he was standing up for the public option. So so that's how this game works. There's always enough, just like there's enough Joe Manchins, or there's just enough Joe Lieberman. There's just enough Democrats to fuck things up for us. And they go, oh, I would have done it, but it was that guy. But when I read Listen Liberal, Thomas Frank breaks down all those things Barack Obama, and public option was one of them, all those things that he actually could have done and made happen, didn't need the Congress for even. But by the way, prosecuting Wall Street, antitrust regulation, all that stuff, which he didn't need Congress for any of it, they didn't do any of it. So this was another thing. So that public option is just another one of those things you can point to as whenever they need a Democrat to kill it, they'll find them.
Mm-hmm. And this is why, I mean, leadership needs to change. Leadership, you need somebody in there that is not propped up by these big money donors. I mean, that's ultimately what needs to happen. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they can't be leaders of the party, and you can't expect them to be leaders of the party and get anything progressive done because they're going to kill it in whatever way. So that part of it has to change. But this also goes, I mean, even apart from policy, just fighting Republicans. I mean, Democrats just in general, in terms of fighting Republicans, are weak. Right now, look, on this issue, you may disagree with me, Jimmy, but I think Democrats should move for impeachment. There are multiple reasons, whether it's the violation of the Emoluments Clause, whether it's the multiple cases of obstruction of justice. There is no reason to not push for impeachment of Trump. But Nancy Pelosi isn't doing it. You have Rashida Tlaib fighting for it and Elizabeth Warren fighting for it. I mean, I don't. This is the part where it's not even just about policy, but it's also about simply fighting Republicans. They feel like it's politically a risk for them to do it, but that's the game they've always played. That's the same game they've played for the past 10 years or the past 30 years, is being that they're so adverse to risk. They're so adverse to actually going after Republicans, and they think it's going to work out for them, and it never does. So I don't see, I mean, but when it comes to policy, I completely understand, the money aspect of it. But when it comes to something like impeachment of Trump, I don't understand the reasoning behind not pushing for impeachment.
Okay, so before we move on to the impeachment, I just want to get back to you agree, like, so when I see you saying, why does Barack Obama not understand strategy? You know the answer already, that he actually does understand strategy. It's that his strategy is to not get the public option.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the thing. I was like, and that's the thing that is hard for people to realize. They think like, well, if he was just stronger, if he just pushed harder, he didn't push for it because he didn't fucking want it. He didn't. He didn't want to regulate the banks. He didn't want to break them up. He didn't want to re-regulate them, and he didn't want to prosecute any of them. That's why he didn't push for it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, because of how Obama campaigned in 2008. I mean, I was just watching some old clips of him going after Hillary in 2007, and it's like a completely different guy.
Yes.
So when you see that guy, that he appears to be the strong progressive, really fighting back against Hillary Clinton. I mean, nothing to even close to what Bernie Sanders did in 2016. He actually went hard after Hillary. I mean, when you see that guy, and then you see the complete transformation when he became president and just completely sold out everything that he was discussing on the campaign trail, I think it's perplexing to people. It confuses people because it's like, wait, wasn't this the same guy that was fighting for people while he was campaigning, and now he's just completely giving in on everything? I mean, that's the part that I think people have a hard time getting around, that Obama played them, essentially.
Yes.
I mean, he pretended to be somebody that he wasn't to campaign because he was smart enough to know that he can win as a progressive. But then when it came to actually enacting policy, he can then just be conservative and nobody can say anything because, I mean, what's the alternative? So, I mean, he was successful in that way because this is the thing. Obama is very intelligent. He knew what he was doing the entire time. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow at times for people to really grasp that fact that he played a fake progressive.
Yeah, that is. And so now we both agree that the reason why Barack Obama pretends to be bad at strategy and frustrates progressives is because he's actually a conservative and his goals aren't the same goals that we have, but he gives a head fake that has the same goals we have, but he doesn't. So then you said this about Barack Obama, which I'll talk about after we play it. Here we go.
The status quo was great. That's the problem. I mean, again, I don't understand. Look, it's one thing for sitting Democrats to pretend to not get it because they're being literally paid by their donors not to get that. But it's another thing for Obama, who is out of office, has no reason to bullshit about this, but continues to apparently not understand this. It's insane.
Okay. So now I just want to show you this. So why Barack Obama's out of office, why is he still carrying water for the pharmaceuticals and Wall Street? And it's like, well, here's a headline.
Speeches.
After failing to prosecute bankers, Obama cashes in with Wall Street speeches. Obama goes from White House to Wall Street in less than 1 year. So that would be the answer to even why he doesn't have a cause. They still don't have clean water in Flint. He doesn't give a shit. It's like I said, when Barack Obama was president, there was such a huge gap between what the government was doing and what people thought the government was doing. And now when Trump's president, there's no gap. Everyone knows exactly what they're doing. So like when they were getting upset that Trump banned Muslims at the airport, I was like, why do you think there's Muslims at the airport? Because Barack Obama's been bombing them for 8 straight fucking years. Does Barack Obama have to bomb them at the airport for you guys to get pissed off? And so people are starting, I think, to wake up to this stuff now. Trump's putting immigrants in cages. Barack Obama built those cages. Oh, Trump is gassing immigrants at the border. Barack Obama gassed immigrants at the border. So
I will say, though, that those reasons shouldn't be used as a reason to say not to do anything about Trump.
Yeah, correct.
That can be used as a lesson. So, yeah, sure, we didn't do anything about when Obama was doing these things. But now that it's so obvious and in your face, we should be doing something about it when Trump is doing it. So
yes.
I just want to ensure that people understand that.
Yeah, that's maybe I wasn't being clear. I'm not saying we should ignore it now.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the reason we got Trump is because a guy like Barack Obama governed like him in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why we got Trump is when people thought they elected a radical, a lefty socialist, right? That's what people thought they elected, a black guy with a Muslim name, and then he governs like Mitt Romney anyway. People get desperate, and that's why they voted for Donald Trump, because and this is happening all around the world. It's not just happening in the United States, as we had Mark Blythe on, the political scientist, who said that Trump was not a local event, and that he coined the term global Trumpism. And so this is the effect of neoliberalism. This is the effect of when the working party gets in bed with Wall Street and turns their back on the workers, right? And so the reason why I bring that up is because Glenn Greenwald says this, and I think I want to talk to you about your reaction.
It's the status quo.
Here we go. Ready? Here we go.
Hasn't been any leverage, because you can complain and object to all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, politicians know that you're going to give them your undying and unconditional support, because the other side is just mildly worse. What you're doing is you're ensuring that you will be ignored.
That was 10 years ago, and he was saying that about the Democratic voters. If you pledge your vote to a politician, what you're doing is you're guaranteeing that you'll be ignored. And that's what I was saying in the run-up to the 2016 election, when everybody that I worked with at the Young Turks and everybody in the world was pledging their support to Hillary Clinton. And I'm like, no, now is when you have to make her come get your vote, because after the election, it's too late. I remember at the Young Turks, Jen's idea was we're going to fight her on day one. In fact, they were going to go protest her on the night of the election at her hotel in New York, but she didn't win. So my whole point is exactly what Glenn Greenwald said 10 years ago, that if we pledge our support to this party, we're going to keep you have no leverage. What do you say to that?
Well, look what happened. So Hillary lost, and the Democrats still didn't learn. So
This
I mean,
is correct.
that's so. I understand what you're saying, Jimmy, but at the same time, I totally would tell people to. I mean, you have to vote for Hillary because of how terrible Trump is. I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's just the like. Unfortunately, I have to say this: if Joe Biden's the nominee, you have to vote for Joe Biden over Trump. I mean, this is a guy who is essentially a fascist. I mean, you cannot allow President Trump to continue being president. I mean, which is why we have to get to impeachment, because there is no reason not to impeach this guy. If anybody else did what Trump did, they would be in jail. So the idea.
So let's before we get to impeachment, let's stay on.
Yeah.
So you disagree with Glenn Greenwald? You think you should pledge support, and that's a winning strategy?
Well, I think he's saying in terms of pledging support. I mean, how do you?
Here, let me play it again. Let me just play it.
how?
Let me just play it again, and then we'll talk.
Been any leverage, because you can complain and object to all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, politicians know that you're going to give them your undying and unconditional support because the other side is just mildly worse. What you're doing is you're ensuring that you will be ignored.
I mean, that's the strategy that that's 10 fucking years ago.
But it's not just about voting, it's about building movements. I mean, if there was no movement to, say, have a Green Party, president, then there's no reason to. I mean, look what happened. You got Trump. I mean, that's not for how terrible Trump is. Hillary would have been better. I mean, culturally.
Yeah, but do you think about you? But again, so you what you're prescribing is that the reason we got Trump, which is neoliberalism, which is Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. So you're saying that the antidote to Trump is actually the thing that got us Trump.
It's not all about voting, though. You have to build movements. I mean, Noam Chomsky said you should vote for Hillary over Donald Trump.
I know.
So, I mean, we can play this game where we're picking and choosing people that we like, but ultimately you have to think about the overall impact on real people's lives. And yes, Hillary is not a great option. She's a horrible option, but Trump is a more horrible option. And you have to build movements in between elections to be able to actually bring. The Justice Democrats did, and you have AOC now, you have Rashida Tlaib. I mean, these things don't happen overnight, right? You have to, it takes time to build these movements up. It takes time to support people like an AOC, like a Rashida Tlaib, like a Ilhan Omar, to actually have people that represent real Americans in Congress. Building those movements takes time. So it's not going to happen in one election. So ultimately, that's how I view this entire thing. When it comes to the actual vote between a Republican and a Democrat, I think you should always choose the Democrat, but in between elections, you should be helping to try and build movements so that you actually can create this kind of force that can enact real change.
So here's what Mike Gravel says. I just want to read this to you. He says, if Democrats nominate Joe Biden, he may win, and we'll have 4 years of weak, feckless Democratic leadership. And then in 4 years, he'll be defeated by a Republican Party even more openly white nationalists. If you nominate an Obama Redux, you'll get a worse Trump Redux. So this is what I've been trying. This has been the mission of this show since I read Listen Liberal, is to try to get people to think beyond one election cycle. That, by electing Barack Obama twice, that gave us Trump. By telling people to vote for Hillary Clinton, that got us Trump. And if we put Joe Biden in there and people's lives get worse in the next 4 years, which they will.
But they'll get worse under Trump.
And we'll get a worse, but then in 4 years, we'll get a worse Trump. The deal is, if we keep pledging our vote to the problem, we're never going to get a solution.
Look, Jimmy, I like you a lot, but you also said that if Trump would win, they would build a big enough movement that in 4 years we'll have a big progressive like Bernie Sanders. Well, if
right
we're doing
now,
this again and Trump wins again, I mean, clearly we can't be predicting the future, which is why you have to do what you can.
2020 hasn't happened yet, David.
David,
2020 is still coming up.
David, 2020 hasn't happened, and Bernie Sanders is right now the leading candidate running for president. Do you think that would be happening if Hillary Clinton? Wait a minute. Do you think that would be happening if Hillary Clinton was president? No, of course not. We'd be going
But we
back.
also
We'd
don't
have
know
a
if Bernie's gonna
solid.
win.
We'd have a solid
We also
Republic.
don't know if Bernie's going to win.
Right, we don't. But I'm saying we also would have a solid Republican Senate and a solid Republican House. We'd be in more wars. We'd be in Venezuela. Things would be getting. I mean,
Well, we don't necessarily know what would happen under
and then
Hillary
we'd all have to
presidency.
rally around Hillary in 4 more years. Nobody would be allowed to primary her. We'd have that again. So again, I like you. That's why I'm having this. I don't like to have these kind of conversations with people I don't like. So that's why I'm having this conversation. But we've been doing what you're saying to do for the last 40 years, and every 4 years. Now Barack Obama openly admits he's a Republican. He said, my policies are moderate Republican. That's how you shift the Overton window to the right. So by keep doing this, by pledging our vote to corporatists like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, and if they know they have your vote, just like Glenn Greenwald said 10 years ago, it just keeps getting worse. So we've been doing not what Glenn Greenwald said, but what you've been saying, and it got us Trump.
But I don't think it's getting worse now. I think you see the Justice Democrats. I mean, you have to understand how the impact that someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has had on the conversation. I mean, we're talking about the Green New Deal. I don't think that would be a topic of conversation if you didn't have her in Congress. So you have this movement now where, yes, the window for the past 40 years has been moving to the right, but I think AOC and other Congress people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, they are moving the window now more to the left. And
yes,
again, as I said, these changes don't happen overnight. Like, it's not going to happen with one presidential election. You have to actually build the movement from the ground up, from within Congress, eventually the Senate, and that's how you take over the Democratic Party. And you have to replace the leadership. I mean, that's ultimately the most important thing. You have to replace Nancy Pelosi. You have to replace Chuck Schumer, because then that's when things ultimately change. That's when the priorities change.
I couldn't agree with you more. When I realized this, it kind of was a mind blower for me that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leadership, is to the right of Trump voters. Right? Yeah. Not Trump, but Trump's voters. They're to the right because Trump's voters are for a single payer. They're for taxing billionaires and millionaires. They're for the Green New Deal. They're for ending the wars. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are not for any of those things. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, but what you have to ask yourself is, what do Trump supporters want more? Do they want single payer, or do they want a president that is a racist? Like them.
I think that if
the impact on culture, we can't look over how important cultural issues are to right-wing voters, and I think Democrats forget that a lot. That's why, even regardless, I would hope with a Bernie Sanders candidacy that you would get some of these voters over, but ultimately, I'm less concerned about getting Republican voters, and I'm more concerned about getting people that don't vote. I think that's how you actually win in this movement. You have to get people out that don't normally vote, because you're not going to get a lot of those hate-filled racists that Trump gets. You're just not going to get them regardless of the policies. So you have to actually go after non-voters.
Right. No, I agree with you too. There's always going to be there's the Dick Cheneys, the George W. Bush, those hardcore Republicans. You're never going to get those. But you will get the guys like we've interviewed on this show, who was a Waffle House cook, Nick Smith in Virginia, who says, hey, we knew Donald Trump was a loudmouth jag-off Yankee who should have got his ass kicked a long time ago, but he was promising us something. At least he was promising us something, and Hillary wasn't promising us anything. So those are the people I think you can get. But you're right about the most important thing, and the reason why Hillary lost was because the people who came out and voted for Barack Obama twice in Wisconsin and Michigan would not come out to vote for her in Wisconsin and Michigan. That we've done stories about that. The New York Times has even covered that. So that's really, you're onto that. The biggest voting bloc in America is the people who don't vote, and then the next biggest voting bloc are people who aren't members of a party, the independents, and then like only the Democrats 26% and the Republicans 27%. Very small percentage of voters. I want to show you one more tweet. This guy says, it's not like I ever aspired to be a radical, but if you have kids and grandkids and you're paying attention, then you have to realize that we don't have time for gradual change by compromise. We compromised our way into an existential crisis. We need progressive change now. What do you say to that guy?
I mean, I completely agree. But that's why it's not just about electoral politics. It's also about building movements, like joining the DSA, for example, joining groups that are trying to achieve at least on the local level or state level, actual change. And then when you start to build those pockets of movements, they grow, and they eventually grow into a movement that can actually win a presidency. So it's one thing to, hope and wish and think that, one vote in an election is going to change everything. But ultimately, this kind of stuff takes work, and it takes time to actually build the momentum needed to win.
Okay. Let's talk about real quickly. I want to talk about healthcare in Canada. Now, I hear it's a nightmare, Dave. It's a nightmare, right? Everybody has to wait. Isn't it a nightmare?
Terrible.
Aren't the people in Canada screaming, we want United States-style healthcare?
Oh, yeah. We all want private insurance companies to take care of us. Yeah, it's amazing here. I mean, I'm just going to say it. So we have a single payer system. It's federally regulated, but provincially it changes depending on the province. But there's like standards set for the entire country. And ultimately, we have basic coverage covered. So when it comes to your family doctor, medications are partially covered. So actually, this is what I want to get into as well. Bernie's Medicare for All plan is better than what we currently have because it covers dental care, it covers vision care. I think it has pharmacare in there as well. So there are steps taken in Bernie's Medicare for All plan that is better than what we have. But what we have is a major step above what Americans currently have. I mean, just think of the idea alone. When you're stuck to a private insurer, say you have you work for a great company, they have a great insurance plan. You are stuck to that job. Say you want to leave, but what's preventing you from leaving is the fact that you have great health insurance. So imagine a system where you don't have to worry about that at all. You can maybe start a business. You can leave your job. You can start a business. You have healthcare. There's no worries. So I mean, just on that one aspect alone, I mean, that is one of the big reasons to change to a single payer healthcare system. But there are so many benefits, whether it's a preventative healthcare. So a close family member of mine just had a colonoscopy, which is a preventative measure in case there's anything else, that may arise down the line. That not only saves lives, but it also saves money. Because what happens if you don't get checked out early, you end up getting cancer. That costs more money. So this idea that, I mean, there's multiple studies now showing that a Medicare for All system would save money over the current system. I mean, all you have to do is look at countries around the world, not even just Canada. I mean, look at Europe. The fact that when I see healthcare stories in the U.S., it's almost like looking back in time because we are so far past that now. Like to think that healthcare still is not a right, that you still have to pay for it like it's a cell phone. I mean, it's so completely absurd to me that it's hard to even fathom because I have grown up in a system where I've always had healthcare. I had surgery once. It didn't cost anything. I got surgery, came home. It was like one sheet of paperwork. Like that was it. There's no, it's so simple. And I think that's what people in America really need to understand. It's so simple to the point that you don't think about it. I don't ever think about healthcare. And I feel like Americans have to think about healthcare all the time.
That's amazing that I don't ever have to think about healthcare. That's all Americans think about.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Now,
and also just one more thing on that. We also choose our own doctors. So there's this idea that, because it's government run, that they pick your doctor for you. Not true. You choose your own doctor. You have it. This is the thing. Universal healthcare, a Medicare for All system would give you freedom. This idea that it would somehow give you less freedom because it's government run is so completely absurd. It takes out the profit-making middleman. There is no longer someone trying to make money off of sick people. What you have now is a system where you get health care when you need it. You have preventative care. You're not tied to an employer. I mean, the benefits honestly are endless. So I think right now we are winning the battle there. I mean, you see recent polls saying 70% of voters support a Medicare for All system, including majority of Republicans. So I think opinion is changing on that. So to see the Democratic Party continue to act like it's this far left position is just absolutely hilarious. And I really hope that you nominate somebody for 2020 that will push for a Medicare for All system.
How many viable Go
But
ahead.
we're supposed to vote for someone who won't, though, right? We have to vote for Joe Biden, right, David?
Ron Placone, did you hear his question, Dave?
Well, if you're picking Trump or Joe Biden, I'm sorry, I hate Joe Biden.
Yeah, I get it. It's that thought that you thought of yourself.
I don't want to
Yeah,
get back
very
to that discussion,
insightful.
but
No one's.
there are levels of like what's terrible. It's not just like there is a difference between Biden and Trump. Now it's not a big difference, but there's a difference. So I don't want to get back.
Yeah,
into that,
I mean,
but-
what was horrible was when Trump tortured Chelsea Manning all those years. I mean, what was horrible? I mean, every horrible thing you can think of, Joe Biden has done. It's just the Iraq War. They tortured Chelsea Manning.
He's a terrible person.
He's
100%.
terrible. He's all on board with Trump in Venezuela. He's for Syria, Libya. He couldn't be worse. He tells you can't have Medicare for all. He tells you can't. The banks are. Oh, he just did a thing the other day. He said billionaires are not the problem, and I was like, I knew it. I knew it was somebody with no money and no power. I knew it had to be. I mean, this guy is. 4 years of Joe Biden will. What? I don't know how they could get worse than Trump. You know what they're going to get? They're going to get a competent Trump. And then that's what aren't you afraid of that?
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. But that's why you can't let Joe Biden win the nomination. I mean, that's ultimately that's what has to be the focus now. I also don't look. I also if Joe Biden wins the nomination, I think he'll lose. So
I do too. I do too, by the way. Those same people who didn't vote for Hillary are going to also not vote for Joe Biden.
They'll stay home. Like it's the same thing.
Especially since he doesn't offer them anything. He just did an interview on ABC, and they said, Trump's motto is "Make America Great Again." What's yours? And he said, "Make America Moral Again." I'm like, when did this happen? That's what the Republicans used to do in the 80s. That was Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and all that bullshit. And they impeached Clinton over a blowjob. And they were the moralizers. And now it's so backwards, it's flipped. And he offers people nothing. Not a goddamn thing will he offer them. Except if you feel icky that Trump is president, you won't feel icky anymore. But I'll still fuck you as hard as Trump ever fucked you.
Did you see that the other day Joe Biden said he doesn't have time to lay out his healthcare plan?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah. Did you see him grab a little boy and say he said it was okay if I touched him? Did you see him do that?
Yeah. There's endless shit like that. That's what he's leading right. He's leading right now, but once the debates start, I think he's going to drop off. He's always dropped off. I mean, when you have other people in the race who actually have something to offer, and Joe Biden is out there, even him giving his speeches, I mean, he's mumbling over his words. He's not the old Joe where he can really play a crowd. He's not that same guy anymore. So I just don't think people are going to fall for it this time.
It's a matter of the superdelegates, right? So it's gonna. Do you think it's my theory of it's gonna get pushed to a second ballot and then they're gonna choose anyway the superdelegates?
I try to be optimistic. I hope that doesn't happen, because if it gets to the point where, look, there's a fair argument to make that if Bernie wins in terms of has more delegates, but doesn't have enough to doesn't have a majority, and it goes to a second ballot, I think there's a fair argument to make that at that point, push Bernie to run for an independent run against the Democrat because he won the nomination. I mean, if you have the superdelegates pushing a candidate over Bernie, even though Bernie got the most votes, you can't. That's a problem. At that point, that is a crisis. So yeah, at that point, I would say F Joe Biden or F whoever the Democrats put up. Bernie Sanders won the votes. You have to push for a Bernie independent run. I don't know if he would go for it. I would hope he would go for it, but that's a situation that I hope it doesn't come to.
Okay. Well, I also think that if Bernie wins, that's when you'll see a third party. That's when the corporate Democrats will start a new party, and they'll probably call it the Progressive Party because that's the kind of pricks they are.
Or they'll take over the Republican Party, which is also possible.
Yeah, that is also possible. Yeah. Yes. I wish they would go to the Republican Party. That's where they belong.
Yeah, that would be great.
I wanted to ask you about Justin Trudeau. So what does a Canadian think about Justin Trudeau?
He's essentially Canada's Obama. I mean, this is a guy, in some ways, even he's almost a bit like Trump in terms of he inherited his privilege. I mean, this is a guy that his father was prime minister. So this is somebody who he bought a pipeline, a $4.5 billion oil pipeline, while pretending to, be the climate change guy. There's scandals with I don't want to get too into these complicated details, but he has scandals with SNC-Lavalin. This is the scandal where essentially SNC-Lavalin is a large company in Canada where they had there's fraud and corruption charges against them. They were going to be prosecuted. So what was happening behind the scenes is that the AG actually wanted to go forward with these charges, but Trudeau was pressuring her to push for a deferred prosecution agreement, which essentially would let SNC-Lavalin off with a slap on the wrist. Again, showing you that the Liberal Party is connected to these massive corporations, much like the Democratic Party is. So you have this issue right now where we have many options, other options in Canada. I mean, you have the Green Party, which is right now is actually growing in support. You have the NDP, and we have a system here, a parliamentary system, where it is actually viable that we can elect somebody that is not liberal or conservative, and actually put up a party like the NDP that represents unions and workers, and have a leader like Jagmeet Singh that actually represents people. So luckily, we have a system here where we can do that. It's a little tougher in the U.S. to push for a third-party candidate because you don't have a parliamentary system, so it's a little different. But because we have that option to do that, I mean, it has to start now, because ultimately, I mean, right now, the Conservative Party in Canada, again, Canadians do this thing where they go back and forth. They go between Conservatives and Liberals. And these are two parties that represent wealthy interests. So there has to be a change here, because we can't keep doing this back and forth thing. And right now, the Conservatives are actually leading in the polls. There's an election later this year. I'm very frightened at the idea of Andrew Scheer, who's the Conservative leader of his party, coming into power. So Justin Trudeau, yeah, ultimately, this is a guy that is just a neoliberal, and he does not represent the best interests of Canadians. He represents massive corporations, the wealthy, and special interests.
Wow. So, but you have the NDP party. First of all, what does NDP stand for?
New Democratic Party.
New Democratic Party. So they're the new.
Actually, they're the party that got us universal health care back in the 60s. So Tommy Douglas, the father of the NDP, he pushed for universal health care. He was actually in the early 2000s voted, I forget the exact terminology, but the most popular Canadian, basically. Yeah. So
the guy who gave them health care.
Yeah. So he's looked at as, the greatest Canadian of all time, because he's the guy that brought us universal health care. So, yeah, that's how it essentially formed. And it formed with the close ties to unions. So the NDP has always been close with unions and workers and labor rights, as well as, of course, healthcare. So right now they're pushing for a universal pharmacare plan, because even though we have universal healthcare here, we still have to pay for medication, even though I have to say it's a lot cheaper here than the U.S. So, I mean, for example,
if Cory Booker moves to Canada, he'll get those prices up for you.
Well, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Because when I went to get my medication, this is like a few months ago, I was sick for a bit. It was $20. So I mean, and that's for a bottle of pills. So this is our medication is a lot cheaper here. That said, it would be better if we didn't have to pay for it at all. It would help a lot of people who are in situations where they can't even afford $20 for medication. So they're pushing for stuff like that. But I mean, our elections as well, they're so short. They're like 3 months at most. So what ends up happening is it's not exactly clear what all the parties are running on until we actually get closer to the election and can actually go through their platform and really understand what they're all about. But right now, yeah, the NDP or the Greens, I have to say Elizabeth May, the leader of the Green Party, is actually the most popular leader of any party right now in Canada, even though they only have 2 seats in our two ridings right now in Canada. So the hope is that the NDP grows and the Greens grow. The Greens grow, but unfortunately, the Conservatives right now are up in the polls. So it's hard to kind of understand, or it's hard to predict how it's all going to play out.
It's really tough to take, though, from a guy living in a country with health care, multiple viable parties, and a parliamentary system. Tell me I got to vote for fucking Joe Biden. That's kind of amazing.
You don't live in a parliamentary system, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Change the system. Change the system.
Well, I'm not voting for Joe Biden no matter what. And there's a lot of people like me. And so a lot of people like to be angry at people like me. And what I always say is that if people like me had as much power as you pretend I did, you'd be a lot fucking nicer to me. Because if I actually had the power to swing elections, don't you think you'd need me and you try to butter me up? Otherwise, you have the shittiest voter outreach I've ever seen in my life.
No, yeah, 100. Yeah, when it comes to actually convincing voters, I don't think it really makes sense to go after them and get angry at them to try and change their mind. Generally, that's not how, that isn't really, you can't be persuasive in that way. If you want to win an argument, you have to understand where that person's coming from. And like, in your case, I completely understand. You never wanted to vote for Joe Biden. I 100% understand. I would just say, I think it would be a lot worse under Trump. And I think right now it's worse under Trump than it would be under Hillary.
But there's a lot of cyclical problems. David, there's a lot of cyclical problems that are connected with this. First of all, let's say hypothetically Joe Biden is president, is our next president. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully Joe Biden's not our next president. But let's say hypothetically he is. It would be a very underwhelming presidency. It would be a very center right wing at best presidency. And then the Republicans could nominate a baby with holding a gun and a Nazi flag, and that Republican baby would win the next presidential election. Also, you would have a populace of people who thought, gee, we had another 4 years of left-wing policies and our lives didn't get better. So now all of a sudden...
You could also try to primary Joe Biden. I mean, you have a movement right now within the Democratic Party that is a progressive movement that's starting to grow. They're already coming out against Joe Biden.
I agree, but it isn't as simple as just going the lesser of two evils. And you know what I experienced in 2016, David? I experienced friends of mine who lived in swing states who voted for Hillary Clinton because they were so scared of Trump, and they cried in their car because they had to vote for such an awful nominee. I live in California, a safe state, so I pulled the lever for Jill Stein, not just for myself, but for them and for this country. So I want you to say to me that I was wrong. That's what I want from you. I want you to say to me that I was wrong.
There are people that had their family members deported by Donald Trump. I think there
are people that have family members deported by Barack Obama.
Is a little more important.
People that have people deported by Barack Obama, too.
Members is a little more important than somebody crying over a vote.
Wow, I thought usually I'm the one who gets up. Usually I'm the one who gets heated. This is funny that I'm not the one, but when I've been in these, but I have been in these arguments heated, and when someone says that to me, they say, well, a family member just got deported. I'm like, Barack Obama was a deporter in chief, man. I mean, 30% of Hispanics voted.
But he's not president anymore. Trump's president now. I mean, I completely understand. At the time, something should have been done about that, and it wasn't. But because we're now living in the now, it's important to actually fight Trump on these issues now because he is the president.
Yes,
right now.
I'm with you. So now it's easier to fight these issues because when Barack Obama was doing it, people wouldn't let you even talk about it. It's like, shut up. He's a good guy. Now that Trump is doing it, we can all coalesce and we see how horrible what is actually happening is happening. Before, nobody gave a fuck. Now people care that Trump is doing it. You have to admit that, right?
Oh, no, yeah, 100%.
Okay, so that was always my point. I got a fly in here. But that was always my point, that if that Barack Obama puts the left to sleep. Again, these aren't my ideas. These are ideas of other people who are smarter than me wrote them, and I read them, like Thomas Frank. But the evidence is there that Barack Obama did put the left to sleep, and now we're all aware of that. Hey, Trump is gassing immigrants. Trump is putting them in cages. Barack Obama was doing the same thing, but now we're aware of it, so now we can fight it. That was always my point.
I also want to say, when it comes to, I mean, if you're in California or New York, yeah, vote Green Party. Who cares? I mean, the Democrat's going to win that state. But when it comes to more important states, I think that's where the focus really needs to be. And so, yeah, I mean, if you voted for Jill Stein in California, good. I mean, I don't think it makes a difference. But if you didn't vote, or you voted for Jill Stein in states that went to Trump from Obama, then I think that's a little more important.
Okay, so we got the. I mean, I have these conversations almost daily with people about this, and it's just we just have different theories of voting strategies. I agree with you that we need to form coalitions and, raise awareness about these things and fight them. I just think it's easier to fight against these things with a Republican president than it certainly was with Barack Obama, especially since he was a Republican president too, which we both agree on that. So we can agree that it's been the Democratic Party's failures that has led us to what I would consider an existential crisis right now, especially because of climate change, right?
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, we could say failures, or we could say that's how they designed it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have these two parties propped up by corporate interests.
It's that.
That's what they wanted. So
it's that. It's not a failure. I slipped into that same fucking thing of why we started this conversation is I'm pretending they are failing and they're not failing. They're doing exactly what they're chosen to do. Well, listen, David, it's been great talking with you. Even when you're wrong about shit, I like hearing from you.
Same with you, Jimmy. Same with you.
Now, and I'm sad that so when we met each other in Burbank, was I nice?
Oh yeah, you were. Oh yeah. Oh, very nice.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. All right. So I'm always worried. Someone said, "Hey, remember I met you?" And I go, "Oh fuck, what did I say?"
That's why you got to be nice to everybody, and then it just works out.
Yes. Now, well, this happens to us all the time. One time, this guy cuts in front of us in traffic, and Steph is kind of like, "Can you believe this guy?" And he rolls down his window, and we think he's going to yell at us, right? And he goes, "Hey, love your show."
Drive-by compliment. That's good.
We were like, hey, good thanks. It was like, well, you got to be nice to everybody. Nice to everybody. All right. Well, everybody, your show is really gaining in popularity, right? Have you noticed?
Yeah, it kind of blew up this year. In January, I had one video hit 1 million views, and from there, kind of exploded. So
that's what does it when you get the million views.
Yeah, when you get the 1 million view video, that's it.
It really is. We had one that about Barry Weiss. That thing, we're still.
Oh yeah,
we're still
Barry
writing off the fumes of that video. Yeah, thank God she's so horrible, Barry Weiss.
Oh, she's terrible.
Thank God. Thank God Joe Rogan has such a non-threatening environment that they let their guard down.
Oh yeah,
and reveal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let me just ask you one more time before I go. I could talk to you forever, and I really appreciate you, giving us all this time. I just want to talk to you really briefly about Russiagate. And I know you want to impeach him, but just on the Russiagate thing, aren't you kind of a little surprised? I am that somebody made an analogy like when a guy would get his posse to go out looking for people, they would always bring a couple extra horses because if the horse they were riding got too tired or whatever, they just hop on the other horse and keep going. And so that's what the American news media has done. Like Russiagate died, they just fuck it. We're on the and then they didn't miss a stride. And now they're going towards obstruction and this and that and to the point where Rachel Maddow, we have a video on this where she was saying that Robert Mueller is not being involved in redacting the Mueller report. It's Barr himself, even though on her news crawl it was saying Mueller's helping Barr do the redaction. I mean, even her own producers are correcting her in real time. So just give me what your sense is.
I mean, when it comes to the media, total and complete media failure. But I think it's important to separate what the media has failed on and separate that from what the Democratic Party should do. So did the media completely play up this Putin Trump conspiracy for 2 years? 100%. But at the same time, the Mueller report has multiple examples of obstruction of justice. But even apart from the Mueller report, Trump and the emoluments clause, the violation of the emoluments clause. After Trump won the election in 2016, Saudis bought up 500 rooms in a Trump hotel, and then what happens? Oh, Saudi arms deal. The
why didn't
murder,
they go
nothing
after
happens.
that? So
the war
David,
in Yemen.
Why didn't they go after that? I agree with you on all this stuff. He's correct. Why didn't they go after that? And why did they go after a hoax?
Because the Democrats are weak. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is. I mean, Nancy Pelosi knows all this, but I think she thinks in her head that it's going to hurt. It's going to make Republican voters not want to vote for us in 2020 if we go after Trump. But they're not going to vote for you anyways. I mean, you have to go after non-voters. So I think the way you excite people out, I mean, part of the reason, there are people out there that look to our, unfortunately, some people don't care about Medicare for all, but they do care about getting Trump out. So if you can play both of those cards, both push out strong progressive policy and both talk about getting Trump out of there and pushing for impeachment, I think that works to two different audiences, and I don't see a downside to that.
I see a huge downside. A couple ways. Mike Pence, you'd get Mike Pence. In fact, when we had a clip,
you think Mike Pence is going to win an election?
You're talking about? Oh, that's what you're talking about, getting rid of him for 2020. Oh, okay.
No, but I mean, in terms of, first of all, there's no way. Yeah, in terms of actually getting Trump out, that's not going to happen because they don't have the numbers to convict in the Senate. But just in terms of fighting Trump, just in terms of the Democrats showing some fight against Republicans, I mean, I don't understand. If you support Nancy Pelosi here, fine. I don't support the Nancy Pelosi strategy of being weak on Trump. I'm with Rashida Tlaib and I'm with AOC and Ilhan Omar and actually trying to get Trump out of there. So I think that's ultimately what we have to look at, is understanding the fact that not everybody cares about progressive policy, but they do care about hating Trump. And if you can play that card as well, there is no real downside, in my opinion, to doing that.
I mean, I make so many points in my head and then I forget them.
I do that all the time. Don't worry.
I know. So yeah, I mean, to me, Russiagate helped Trump. Ultimately, it helped Trump, and it's now a lot of people smarter than me have been saying that what it's done is it created like this kind of Teflon shield around him, because now when accurate criticisms come his way, he could just go fake news, because the last 2.5 years were complete fake news.
Yeah, but he would do it anyways. And his poll numbers are down. I mean, of course, you can look at different polls and stuff, but his favorability rating is down. And regardless of what Democrats do, Trump's going to call fake news. So when it comes to actually getting Trump's base, you're not going to get those people. But what you can do is actually show people that you have fight in you when it comes to going after Trump.
So Trump was going to say fake news anyway, but the fact that they actually were fake news is what fucking makes it land now. They were fucking fake news.
When it comes to the conspiracy fake news, but he can't call fake news on the obstruction of justice or the emoluments. So, yeah.
And how do you feel about that overall? That literally, one of the weapons of like people like the Washington Post is to smear people by calling them conspiracy theorists. We've been a victim of that. Like, we covered Seth Rich one day. The next day we do another video debunking, because the investigator hired by the family was talking on the news. We covered that. The next day we debunk him. Yet forever the Washington Post and everyone else somehow smears us with that. The mainstream news media pushes an evidence-free red-baiting conspiracy theory at the top of their lungs for 2.5 years. Nothing, not one piece of dirt on them. That's outrageous, no?
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, they don't want to prop up people that criticize them, right? So if the Washington Post is going after you, it's because they're afraid of you. I mean, that isn't always the case, obviously, but it is the case a lot of the time when it comes to independent media that is free from, any big money interests or certain perspectives that are within this bubble. I mean, when you challenge that existing system, those established ideas, yeah, you're going to rattle some people. And ultimately, that's going to happen if you are challenging the system. People aren't just going to accept it. So there are people in place, whether it's media, whether it's politicians, that will push back against change or push back against new information or any ideas that are already established within the walls of those media or those political environments. So it's best not to even really let it get to you, because ultimately it doesn't mean anything. I mean, people that watch you, they're going to, I'm sure they're also going to take in, the Washington Post and New York Times, and you reference them, I reference them. There's great reporting that they do, but it's about being able to separate the BS from the great reporting. Yeah,
I agree with you on that. Now let me think. I have to think of the point I wanted to make again. I'll think of it. So like, for instance, just on the Russiagate, they didn't get Russiagate wrong. They didn't make a mistake, or as Glenn Greenwald pointed out, because if you thought they were just making honest mistakes, half the mistakes would go one way and half the mistakes would go the other way. They're always in the same direction. right? And they never brought on people who had a counter narrative. They never brought on people like
that's 100%. Yeah,
like Aaron Matei, who won an award for his reporting on Russiagate. They never brought him on. I fucking brought him on. How come I know about him? How come they never brought on Bill Binney, who was the #1 NSA codebreaker, to talk about the actual hack? How come they never brought on people from Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity who debunked WMDs in real time? And they never brought me on, or Kyle Kalinske, or anybody, Max Blumenthal. So the fact that they didn't want to counter, because that's how science works. Science is peer reviewed. That's not how journalism works. Journalism is a fucking echo chamber, and people who have a counter narrative are ostracized, which is why people don't trust the news media, which is why you and I have a career. I guess we should be happy about it.
I guess we should. I think generally what happens is they pick sort of these representatives from the Republicans and the Democrats. So in their mind, there is the established Democratic position, and that's the position that they're going to represent. If there is a position left wing of that, that's crazy, that's bad shit, we can't represent that. But then they're also going to be, we got to be fair, so we also got to represent the Trump side. So they're only going to have either the Republican side of the argument or the established Democrat side of the argument. They're not going to have an actual lefty that is challenging this system and these investigations from the left. So that ultimately, that's the problem here. But luckily, I mean, MSNBC in some ways, and CNN, I think in some ways as well, is getting a little better on this. So MSNBC has been having on Justice Democrat representatives, surprisingly. Now, not all the shows are having them on, but I've seen Waleed Shahid on Chris Hayes a number of times. There's been I forget his name now. Something Trent. Corbin
Trent.
Yeah. He's great too. So he's been on there. So hopefully that's changing a little bit, but it is hard. I mean, it's hard to find people like that on television, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Or even Glenn Greenwald, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner, who was also a skeptic of Russiagate. They didn't have him on. It's just so you don't have to have me on. I'm just a nightclub jagoff comedian. But Glenn Greenwald is an actual award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. Maybe you should have him on, especially since you had him on all the time before.
Yeah, 100%.
So it just goes to show you, like, they weren't allowed to cover Bernie Sanders or you get fired. So Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow said, okay, I won't cover him. And because they wanted their job. Just like they have to go along with the war. Rachel Maddow just did a segment. Did you see the segment where she was feeling sorry for John Bolton?
About Venezuela.
Yes.
Yeah. That was insane.
Insane. Like, I don't even know what the point was she was even trying to make in that segment. Did you?
She was trying to say, John Bolton and Trump are saying different things in public. Look at that. Isn't it weird that Trump has the same position that Putin does? But like she's so focused on like appearances and not looking at the actual policy of what a coup in Venezuela would do. So yeah, Maddow over the past couple of years, it's so unfortunate because honestly, I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, she did some great stuff. She was actually one of the first reporters to actually break the Flint story. But since Trump became president, she's kind of completely lost her mind, and it's been sad to see from someone that did great reporting in the past.
Well, it just goes to show you, right? Like it's like, oh my God, they always had this in them. I didn't know it. It's like Trump. Who knew that Trump would be the undoing of so many people? It's like Trump's horribleness somehow shines a light and it reveals the cracks in their personality like nothing else. It's amazing, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. But even then, like, why isn't Maddow focused on the impact that Trump is having on real people's lives in the country, as opposed to focusing on the Russiagate story? So that's the part where if you want to fight Trump, good, like you should be fighting Trump. But why are you so focused on an investigation that isn't even done yet? Like for 2 years, all just speculation about what might happen. How about focusing on actual stories that are affecting real people's lives? That's the part to me that just I don't understand. It's completely absurd.
Yes, that's exactly. Hey, if you want to fight Trump, the Democrats just helped him deregulate Wall Street again. Maybe you talk about that for a week. Hey, the Democrats are still fast-tracking as judges. Maybe you talk about that for a week, because that's going to have a long-term impact on our country, the judges that we have. So that's the kind of shit. The Democrats are literally making sure that happens for Trump, right? Yeah. They get just enough Democrats to make sure we can fast-track as judges. Isn't it amazing? They get just enough. They get just enough Joe Liebermans. Just enough. Anyway, David, it's been great again. Thanks for being so generous with your time.
Oh, yeah, it's been fun.
And, you're wrong about that voting thing. But other than that, we really like you. And no,
Well, it's
honest,
great talking to you.
you really do a great show, and
thank you.
everybody should check out your show. It's a very tight show, and I watch it often. And
Just go to therationalnational.com, and it gets you to the YouTube page, or go to therationalnational.com/join, and that gets you to the Patreon page.
now,
And thanks again, Jamie, for having
now
me
you're
on.
not looking to get it. Like if MSNBC came to you, would you take a job?
No. So I worked in AM radio for several weeks, and it was well, first of all, there's not a lot of money in AM radio. I learned that. But even apart from that, I enjoy having full control over what I do on YouTube. You know that if you have a cable news show, you do not have control
At all.
So right there, you're just giving away your soul for money, and I can't do that.
Yeah. Okay. That's the it's like now that we can do this, it's like, why would you ever want to have a
Yeah, exactly.
corporate boss? It's like, it's like, I'm sure we don't make the money they make. I'm not making $7 million a year like Chris Hayes. But at the same time, I get to cover Gaza whenever I want. I don't have to wave a flag and blow off a rocket because I'm going to talk about Yemen for 2 minutes. So I don't want anybody to fucking miss it. You know what I mean? It's like I get to.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, everybody, Rational National, David Dole. Thanks for being our friend, and thanks for coming on the show. And I'll see you soon, hopefully. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?